What's up and welcome back. I'm John Stark, MacMovieGuy.com, your favorite blind film critic, and we're going to look out for rocks and sticks and make sure that our friends don't kick the map down a stream conveniently. Because it's Blair Witch time. This is the 25th anniversary of the Blair Witch Project, which I could have done during spooky season. I just kind of ran out of time. But I still wanted to talk about it because I have sort of like weird connections to this movie. Not very thin. Don't get excited. Um, and also, it's an interesting perspective when you watch this film with audio description. So I did want to talk about it. But yes, congratulations to 25th anniversary of Blair Witch Project. Um, and I think Heather Donahue runs. Isn't she a weed farmer now? I think she is. Only like one of the three still acts, I believe. And I sat through this movie again. This is a movie that I will admit has grown on me with every single time that I've seen it. I still don't love the movie, but I think this movie, when I saw it back in 1999, the hype was too real. I didn't get a chance to see it in theaters, but I saw it when it came out on VHS, and maybe I just I remember even back then thinking, I was like, what are they scared of? It's a pile of rocks. Like even back then I was thinking like, I mean, that could be anything. That could be a marker for a hunter. Like they don't even acknowledge that other people go into the woods, like maybe for hunting or camping. It's just like they're just strongly leaning on the fact that these woods are like forbidden and nobody goes in these woods. It's like, but other people would come up here for trips. Not everybody knows the legacy of the Blair Witch. Bound to be some people who have gone through these woods before. So that's what I was always thinking back in the day. And the shaky cam was an interesting gimmick. It works here. They really tried to sell the fact that this cast was dead. It came out. That was part of the thing. Was it was found footage was not really a thing. So what really attracted people to this was that they really thought these people were dead. And I remember when they started appearing on late night talk shows, when this movie started making tons of money, and I remember seeing like Heather Donahue on Jay Leno, and people were like, what? And they were talking, like, I think one of them said, like, they were like, yeah, my family thought I was dead. It's like, um, like they had, I guess, like they had, there was one of them was telling a story about how they had, um, a family who, like, people were calling them because they recognized them in the movie, and they're like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Like there were people who legitimately believed this was like a snuff film. Like people, like these people really died. Um, so kudos for the gimmick. I mean, the gimmick really worked. Obviously, since then, every found footage movie we now know it's just a genre. So when even if you watch something that is semi convincing, like Paranormal Activity, you're like, these are actors. This is really low budget. Um, so yeah, it I like I said, I'm very conflicted on this movie because I think on one hand, the fact my thin connection is that I went through the same film school as Blair Witch people, and when you go through the same film school as people who went and made this like indie movie, and you have a whole bunch of people who are like likely going to be, um, because I took even though I was in the cinema studies track, not production, I was in with a lot of production majors in a lot of my classes. Like we had a lot of mixed classes, and they were obviously going on to make movies, and they would likely be starting with independent features, um, low budget type things. So showing the fact that somebody came out of that program and made Blair Witch uh, is definitely was something that was brought up. You know what I'm saying? And those guys have come back and they've talked at the school. I don't think they talked during my time, but I'm just aware of the fact that they get them to come back as alumni and be like, well, look what we did. Um, And they really did do something. I mean, this movie was made for very little money, and it made over 100 million at the box office. Kudos. It kind of put Artisan on the map in many ways. They didn't survive for very long. The sequel is a hot mess. There's like a whole video as to why that's a hot mess. Oh God, who did it? Good Bad Flicks. Did Good Bad Flicks do it? I think I would check out that channel because they did a really excellent job of exploring like the alternate cuts and everything that went wrong in the production of that movie. The rushed production that they had to put out a sequel, um, the changes made narratively to the film and everything like that. So, yeah, there's like even a different cut of the film available that somebody like tried to piece back together based on what the film was originally supposed to be. That supposedly is a lot better than what we actually got for Book of Shadows. But for this, yeah, I just never thought it was anything. And I I think probably in many ways, especially having seen it this last time, I think the film works more as sort of like a just a film about being lost and the paranoia behind it, and sort of um, the equivalent of cabin fever, if you will. Like, you know, how when you get sort of hold up in a place too long, get that cabin fever. Um, Sort of that feeling of madness that sets in when you feel like you're lost in the wilderness. And what is that like? Because and then you start seeing things, but are you really seeing anything? I don't think we ever needed that ending. You know, I think maybe it would have been a stronger choice to not have the ending shot. Um, as far as audio description goes, it's there's a lot at the front because they're showing a lot more, and they're narratively they're walking around town and they interview the people. And I didn't really realize, but I felt like everybody here actually does a pretty good job. These are all sort of like first time actors, and everybody felt very realistic, and nobody felt like they were overacting. You know, nobody felt like they had stumbled out of a community theater production of Fiddler on the Roof and was well, what I think here. You know, there's nobody here who's like dramatically. Everybody has the right tone. They all feel like real people, which is exactly what they're supposed to feel like. So, they just makes a lot of choices in here that I thought were dumb in terms of things. I never found this film scary, and that's the problem. Is it's supposed to be scary, it's supposed to be a horror film, and I've never found this film scary at all. I appreciate a lot of the technique. I've come to appreciate the cast. I've come to appreciate, you know, the fact that maybe even there's a little bit to talk about here in terms of just lost paranoia. But as a scary film, nah, never. And shaky cam never bothered me either. Also, I didn't see it in the theaters, but I've seen shaky cam in other movies in the theaters, and it hasn't bothered me. So, I just don't think shaky cam bothers me as a visual person. And I'm going to say I'm blind now, so it definitely doesn't bother me. And that's one of the things I was going to talk about the audio description is that I like the audio description track because it focuses a lot on the details, but it can't translate what the experience of watching Blair Witch Project is with the shaky cam. There's no real way to do that. And I've talked about um, a lot of these sort of like nuanced things, which is why I usually say I'm down for like give me all the audio description you possibly can, because I know that there are things we're always missing out on. We're always missing out on these little details, these choices that the filmmakers have made, in visual styles and even framing things in shots and color grading and you know, is somebody framed up close, or are they framed from far away, or are they mid frame, is the is are they maybe not centered in the shot and they're supposed to be off to the side. There's so many different like little nuanced things, but the biggest thing here is shaky cam. And how do you translate that? Because that is such a huge part of this, is that these people are running around with a camera. And I kind of felt like that was left behind in the audio description. Like they weren't 100% sure how to translate that. So the fact that the camera's handheld and being moved around a lot, and it gave people that sort of nauseous feeling in theaters. I was thinking if we were back in 1999 and blind people in theaters with audio description equipment, like everybody around them would be like, oh, blind person just sitting there going, What? What's wrong? I don't know. Friends are having to explain to them, it's shaky. It's the camera's moving around a lot. Because there's nothing in this audio description track that would support that. So, especially to the extent of, because I've seen Blair Witch, I would say at least twice, maybe three times visually, and it's my first time watching it blind. It's like I don't love this movie a lot, but I keep having to go back to it for random reasons. And it's yeah, it's a lot, but and they focus on the details, but they just don't get the essence of the movie and the reason why the movie, you know, sort of worked on people and why it was a thing. So I'm very, I could go either way on this. You know what I'm saying? Like technically, this is what you would get in a normal audio description track for a normal movie, but this is not a normal movie. So how do you grab the essence of something that is abnormal and put it into film? And I think that would be the discussion to have here. I think this is a great film to sort of use if we ever start pushing the boundaries of audio description and really look at things outside of maybe what was written in a book a long time ago about the rules of audio description and start thinking to ourselves, well, there are these special case scenarios. What do you do for a film like Blair Witch? And how do you address what is clearly a strong stylistic choice that drives the reason to watch the film? And I don't think that was fully addressed here. So it's like they mentioned. I mean, it mentions that they're holding the camera or she points the camera at. So, but I don't know. I don't think you would get necessarily to the extent of what this film actually looks like by through the audio description. So, um, that's my thought. And being on both sides of the track on this one, the vision and then the non-vision side. I just don't think this film, the audio description, translated it well. Do I think it could? Sure. I think there's a way to do that, but it requires a further discussion and an experienced writer. So that's it. I'm not a huge fan of Blair Witch, but this score is going to seem low considering this is such a classic film for people. But you need to understand this movie has like moved up my list in terms of appreciation. It's never going to be an A film because I'm not scared by it. And the number one thing that you need to have in a horror movie is to be at least somewhat scared, at least a little bit. Not at all. So I'm sort of floating around like a B minus now for the Blair Witch is where I think I'm at. So the Blair Witch Project. um, it's really weird, but the remake is scarier. Yeah, to be honest. I mean, I don't find this scary at all. I really appreciate the filmmaking that went into it, and I think in a different way that this film really explores instead of because it doesn't have the budget to be able to scare you with a lot of visual effects. It leans on paranoia a lot, and that's what works for me. But when you actually start getting into the witch stuff, it's like, nah, this doesn't work. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. And I will see you guys on the other side.